too.
Hey everybody, how are we all doing? It's Saturday. Do you know what that means? It means Dad is joining me for the Numbed Wasteland. But we have a surprise. Something I didn't tell anybody. We have a guest tonight. It's a special guest because I've been a fan for a while. We have the Ranting Monkey.
Hi, how are you guys?
And
Oh,
in our
I
chat.
was expecting Chad to answer. Doing
Yeah,
fine,
right?
Ranting Monkey. How are you?
I
Better than yesterday. That's a good thing. So,
Well, that's good.
I am apparently having internet issues right now out of nowhere.
Oh no.
I just redlined YouTube guys on the other end. Let me know if you have a problem, and I'll keep an eye
You
on it
sound
for some reason.
you sound fine to me.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's a lack of bandwidth. Like, I have a pretty good bandwidth, but for some reason my signal in the evening has been crapping out. I think there's a bad connector on the line somewhere, and they won't replace it.
oh,
Oh, it's driving me. It kicked me off. Almost kicked me off a stream the other night. It paused everything I had running, but I don't want to worry about that right now. Oh, and it just went green. Thank you. Uh,
Let's say hi
Thank
to
you.
Chad. Circus
Hi,
Zero,
chat.
hello. Sora Luna, hello. Who else? Who else?
got Skip talking here. You
Skepta,
got lots of good people in
Yep,
here.
Talk.
welcome.
For coming.
It is good to see new names in the chat. That is wonderful. I do have a rule about wrenches. There is a way to get one, and it's to be on the game show. So check out my channel later. Right now, we have a plan. We sort of have something to talk about tonight. Now, Monkey being a guest, let's put this out there. We don't like the heated debate and the argument. Obviously, this is just a conversation show. We want to cover things, discuss them, and I honestly like to see people's perspective and why they look at things the way they do.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that, honestly, I can't put myself on this compass on the screen because I don't know exactly where I would even come close to fitting in. And I don't really lean towards the side. But then during specific arguments, I guess you could say I lean specifically towards one side, but it's not throughout all of my arguments, which is why I have a hard time when people argue, well, those on the left are trying to da 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 because those on the right aren't listening, or vice
So you're
versa.
probably central.
I'm sort of a centrist, but not through and through because again, I differ on various topics.
Maybe you're Mountain Standard.
Well, to me, that's what a centrist is. A centrist isn't somebody who's a fence sitter, because that's what it's so often described as, somebody who can't make up their mind. I consider myself mostly centrist with a little bit right leanings, especially when it comes to fiscal policy. But like if you do a political compass test, I come in libertarian, but right about on the line of left and right.
Okay.
I'm pretty much left. But I'm not one of these crazy wacko lefts. I'm not a communist. I do believe in two genders. So for that,
So
that's pretty much
hold on.
centrist.
Let's discuss that. Apparently in New York, there's a new Congress, or I think it's Congress, up for election. She's just led the
Oh,
Democratic primary election, and
yeah,
she's running on a Democratic socialist platform like
yeah.
Bernie Sanders.
She worked with Bernie.
Here's the question: Is this really what America is coming to?
America, no. The big cities on the coast, sure.
But
It, the idea, okay, it's what Bernie calls his socialism is mostly just what far left people have been pushing for a long time. The idea of paid college is not new. The idea of universal employment, which is one of the things she ran on, is not new. Um, these aren't new things, and they've been around for a while, and they typically only do very well on the far left and far right of the country, in like specifically New York, California, Seattle, Portland, the hotbeds of far left liberalism. And what made her win so impressive isn't that she ran as a democratic socialist. Where she ran, that's a pretty easy sell, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But she beat the number 4 Democrat in the House is what made this such big news, because he decided not to actually pay attention to his constituents at all. So,
but that's pretty much normal for the Democratic Party at this point. They're pretty much a corporate center organization, and they're not really listening to the people that really wanted Bernie, that really wanted some help. There's a lot of people out there, they're struggling. I mean, insurance, medical insurance, big banks, they're all in line to get their dose of socialism. But when it comes to regular ordinary people, or people that are making $20,000 a year, where's their help?
Yeah, and it is hard, as I don't know where everybody's income falls, but I looked up our income, my household right now, which is working on one income, which falls around $30,000. And believe it or not, I was awestruck when I realized that was like the 52.5 percentile.
That's crazy.
That
I mean, for the United States,
my mind.
For the richest country in the world, that $30,000 is more than half of what this country, the population of this country is making. Well, that and lower.
I make more than 52.5% of the population.
Right. That's insane.
From income.
That's insane.
I apologize if the stream gets really, really laggy, guys. Let me know. I'm pretty sure it's my ISP. I'm doing everything on this end I can. I got my OBS running great. It's YouTube's not receiving everything I'm sending, and I can't figure out why. So I'm trying to fix it on this end.
You sound fine. No,
the audio is good. I think it's diverting our conversation primarily and taking the YouTube channel. I don't know what's going on. I really don't, and it's annoying me. Maybe it's just YouTube.
Maybe it is. Maybe they're experimenting.
Oh God, that stupid experiment.
I'm getting annoyed.
Don't you see this push to socialism as a swing from the last 20 years, where the average worker is working more for less? I mean, at the same time where CEO salaries have gone from a few $1 million to tens of millions of dollars a year, and the little peon employee is making maybe $5,000 more and working double, and with no overtime and with no benefits, and God forbid he goes and gets a retirement fund right when he's ready to cash in the retirement fund. All of a sudden it disappears.
Or he gets fired first.
Or gets fired first. Or hey,
no. I don't see that as part of it, because the majority push of this is coming from young people who don't even have to worry about that yet. I see what you're saying, because you're right, and
young people that can't find a job, that are living at home.
Oh no,
forced to. They've lived with a 2-parent family that's been working their ass off. I don't know.
Yeah, but again, you got to look at the people who are pushing it, and the ones who are really the ones who really got behind Bernie. You're not talking about people who grew up destitute. Bernie didn't have a huge poor following. He had a middle class following. For all of the talk of there's no middle class, there is still. And if you look at a lot of his supporters, they were spoiled little rich kids, and they we have this problem when people come out of college where they end up overburdened. I've pushed the idea that we don't need college more than we need universal college.
I got a better one for you. I know people that get on online colleges just because their state offers them extra money to go to college to take out the state loans.
Oh, yeah.
They get cash on a regular basis to help them survive while they take online courses.
And it's there's so much that feeds into all of this. You got these kids that are coming out of college and they're expecting, and they've done studies on this. These kids coming out of college expect to start making $50,000-$60,000 a year right out of the gate. Where my parents, when they got out of high school, because college wasn't pushed as much back then, nobody expected to come out of high school making $50,000 a year, or even the equivalent back then. You were expected to struggle a little bit and build up and build up. And we have a problem right now where people want it immediately. Now, that's not to say we don't have problems. We do. I was watching the Dave Rubin talk, I guess is what it is, yesterday with Ben Shapiro.
Yes.
Jordan Peterson.
Doesn't like the post office.
And Eric Weinstein was on there. And he was talking about this. And he actually has a really interesting theory about what's going on. And it basically boils down to employment being a Ponzi scheme. If you can wrap your brain around that, what that means is, if you go back to like the 50s, as new industries were starting, they kept growing. They had to keep growing because America was growing. And so they would hire people, and it gets to a point where you don't need to hire people anymore, or you don't need another senior executive. He used specifically the example of a law firm. So let's say you're an associate in a law firm, and you got, say, 5 partners, but there's 15 associates, all of whom want to be partners, and there's not enough space for them. And if you take that theory and apply it across the whole country to all of our jobs, what's happening right now is inevitable. There's just not, especially when you add in automation, you add in jobs going overseas or down to Mexico. With all of this on top of each other, it's not just that people at the top are making too much or the people at the bottom are not making enough. We just have a system that may not be as sustainable as we think.
Now, here's a weird question. You say that we've grown associative with us growing, so our economy grew with us growing. Now, at this point, imperialistically, we dominate the planet. We literally are everywhere on this planet. Whether or not we control it, we are there for one reason or another.
Oh, we control it either financially, militarily, or politically.
Okay, so maybe, and I laugh about this, maybe Trump sees this and he realizes, and I always try to think outside the box, and I'm trying to understand how he got to the reasoning of the Space Force. And I've come up with a few ideas, but I think this could be added into that pile, that he realizes there's really nothing more for us to do here. We need something to try and achieve, and that will stimulate the economy.
In other words, like the moonshot stimulated the economy. I mean, we can go back to the 50s too. I mean, Ranting, your parents, when they came out of high school, that was around the 50s, or was that?
My dad graduated in '69.
Okay, so I mean, if we go back to the 50s, that was right after World War II.
Sure, exactly. Yeah,
we had huge during World War II. We geared up for unbelievable manufacturing. After World War II, we had huge gluts of not only tooling but materials and areas, and we were practically giving that away for free, almost like a big social program to corporations. That kind of pumped up our economy after World War II. I mean, if you think about it. And even back then in the 50s, if you look at a graph of the low class, the middle class, the upper class. Everybody was moving up at the same direction. I mean, that old saying, all boats rise with the tide.
Sure.
I mean, that was the case back then. And for some reason in the 80s, it changed. The upper class started going straight up. The middle class went flatline, and the poor, hell, they're practically still on the ground. So, I mean, there's so many different variables to pin it down to one thing is kind of hard.
News. Welcome to the chat.
It's beyond one thing like taxes and one thing like social programs or one thing like conservatism. I mean, if we start privatizing it, one thing it kind of irked me. We started privatizing the military.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, after World War II, we could send armies somewhere, and they would not only build something right there, but there were cooks. There were, when you got out of the army, it wasn't necessarily you were a warrior. You may have come out with the ability of cooking for 100 people, or painting, or construction, or there was so many jobs in the army other than shooting guns that you may have actually come out with something that you were going to do for the rest of your life.
You can still do that with certain disciplines in the military.
I mean, they've pretty much privatized everything to the point where even the the junkyard for the Air Force, that's a private company now.
These skills you can pick up in the military can still be. I have a friend who his job that he got when he left the military was directly related to it. It was system technology where he picked that up. But you really should go watch at least the last half of that Dave Rubin thing,
right?
Because it wasn't the 80s; it's actually the 70s. If you look at a graph of where things started to go bad, and I hate saying bad because for all the talk about how poor and everything is, if you look at the poor people in this country, and people hate when you say this, they are so much better off than the poor anywhere else in the world, and to the point of ridiculousness. And I'll give you an example. If you look at the, is it the World Health Organization, World Trade? I forget. One of these groups that, decides whether or not people are poor. One of their standards is whether or not people have a TV.
No.
That is a ridiculous line for whether or not somebody's poor.
That's like people saying cell phones are a commodity, or they're what is it called? Or internet is a utility. It's not.
It's.
There are people who want to make it one, and there's arguments to be made there too. They want it regulated the same way that phones were, electric companies, water companies, and there is some.
Can I offer
some argument?
Something weird to think about that crosses my mind consistently, because even where we are on income, our budget gets really tight and it stays that way. And I try to plan around everything that's going to happen, and I make sure I get every tax credit I can and do everything I can to financially benefit the household. But it almost seems like, stupidly, I have a cell phone and my wife has a cell phone, and we do have a $25 a month DirecTV plan for another 6 months. And I have some cheap services. I'm letting a lot of them run out and stop paying for them to get control again because they're contract. And I was at a different financial level when I set them up than I am now, and you can't get out of certain contracts. So I always think to myself, if I shut off everything that wasn't essential, so if I only left on the electric and the water, I could not have to charge my cell phones or run any of the internet devices or anything that would cut my power down. All my bills would decrease, and I'd have a whole lot more money left over. So I guess, am I really poor, or am I really low income if I didn't have all these disposable amenities? I would have more money.
let me give you an example of where we go wrong with money. One of the things that we do for poor people in this country is called the Earned Income Tax Credit. And if you guys are not claiming that, and you are missing out on a shit ton of government money.
And we'll get into that in a minute because I have an opinion, but keep going.
There was a guy that I used to work with who repeatedly had the company that we worked for raise money for him because he was poor. He had a wife. They were working on their fourth child, last I knew. And they got their earned income taxes back one time. And instead of saving it or paying bills with it, they bought a brand new video game system and a 52-inch television. And that is not a joke. I mean, that is fact.
Oh, I wasn't laughing because it was funny. I mean,
if you go to Walmart at tax time, you will be amazed at how much how much money people suddenly have, and it's because they're just given this money. And part of the idea behind it is to stimulate the economy by having people do that, but it's horrific budget balancing.
Aren't they actually getting back their money?
No. With the earned income tax credit and I believe the child tax credit now, you can get back more than you ever paid in.
But those are disappearing in a few years. In like 4 years.
They're going to be going down. Yeah. Okay. So I have 2 kids, and I fall within the income where I'm eligible for the EITC, and I definitely apply for it. Now, I'm a little angry about what they did with the tax changes because I think I would have benefited more under the old tax rules because I lost my mother, and I did receive a small, life insurance policy, and I made sure I paid everything off, and I tried to invest the money wisely, so I bought a house. And under the old tax code, you got like $1,400 to $1,700 or something like that for EITC, which was reasonable to me. I thought it was way more than I thought I should get just for having kids. Oh, cool. You get a certain tax credit for head of household if you paid for utilities and you spend enough on living there. You got head of household credit, and had a family with you, you got a credit on that. Now, the credit didn't always equal how much you got back. It just meant how much was applied toward what you paid in. And if you had bought a house, it would take a percentage of the money you spent and give you a credit on what you spent on the house and the financing costs and any improvements you made in the first 12 months. Well, they took away the head of household credit, the first-time home buyer credit, the home improvement credit, and they upped the EITC. So, if you were financially responsible in any way and bought or improved your home or did anything, you didn't get any credit whatsoever. But if you got some kids at home, let's give you more money.
Let's look at.
Don't get me wrong, I like it, but I would have gotten better if I'd have gotten credit for the investments I thought I had made.
Let's read some chat a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. What do we got going on over there? I have to apologize, Chad. It is really hard when you get a 3-way conversation going. I'm going to go up here.
Yeah, go up a little.
Contractors do most of the work in the service. Okay, yeah, I guess they do hire out contractors. We were discussing that. It's cheaper to hire someone to have them for a long-term cost of supporting them.
Brian O'Connor says real disposable income started to decrease in the U.S. When the U.S. came off the gold standard in 1973, which is a point because right now our fiat currency is pretty much toilet paper. I mean, a $1980 is like 5 cents in today's money. The inflation that that they're supposed to keep track of, that all the things that actually are inflated, they don't count. They count food. But I mean, if you look at let's say 1980, a top of the line car was about $15,000. Now it's $100,000. That isn't because the car's worth $100,000 and $80 in $1980. It's because money's worthless. It's becoming more and more worthless. Soon you're gonna have to be a millionaire just to pay your bills.
Oh, that's the inevitability of inflation, partially. And part, like using the example of cars, a large part of your cost for cars is government regulation. You also have cars now that you can watch TV in, and we put DVDs in for the little one when she's riding with us.
Yeah,
you couldn't do that in the car when I was little. I mean, you had the radio station. You better hope that you were in close enough to a tower to pick something up. Again, there's just so much that goes into it. We talk about, how worthless the money is, and there's definitely part of that. But so many other things happen.
Sorry.
So many more things happen than just coming off the gold standard.
Yeah, it gets back to what I was starting to illustrate is we think so many amenities that we now have are regular necessities instead of the amenities. And like I said, if we dropped the cell phone or the expensive car or the climate control or the AC working or all of that crap, you really actually have, if I stopped paying for my cable, my phone, and everything, I'd have another $300 or $400 right there. Boom.
Mm-hmm.
Monkey, the one thing about regulation, I mean, sure, over-regulating anything is a waste. But, there are, and, when we were building gas guzzlers, big damn tanks, it was the government that stepped in and said, listen, auto companies, you're going to have to start making cars that produce 20, 30, 40 miles to the gallon at these certain times. And by them doing that, we created cars that could be sold all over the world. We created a Corvette that can not only beat a Ferrari, but get 23 miles to the gallon on the highway doing it. Sometimes regulations, were put in for a reason, because corporations tend to not want to do even what would be good for them. I mean, look at GM. They were the first to come up with a battery-powered car, and people were lining up to buy it. It was the GM execs who said it was a big failure, even against people demanding the car. And they ended up pulling all the cars back and destroying them. That was the Chevy Impact, that little egg car that they built in the mid 80s. So, I mean, regulation, sure. Over-regulating something, totally bad. But a lot of regulations, the history of regulations, be it the railroad safety or fire safety or, corporations not poisoning the food, there's reasons for them.
There's reasons for some of it, but like if you look at why fuel standards were set, it wasn't because of trying to make better cars. The reason they did that was because they said we were going to run out of gas. And what they ended up doing is making cars that run so well, and they last longer.
Yeah, but think about that.
Hang on, let me finish.
Yeah.
What they ended up doing by doing that is actually causing us to use more gas. We use more gas now than we ever did because people have 2 or even 3, 4 cars sometimes, and they're driving them because they can go 50 miles a gallon instead of only 20 miles a gallon. That is us being a victim of our own success there. And that's not to say regulations are bad. I don't think all regulations are bad. The example that I love is, elevators. I like elevator inspectors. There should be fucking standards on an elevator because I don't want to die in a fiery elevator crash. But there are times that it just gets ridiculous. If you go back to when everybody had to switch to digital TVs, the only reason we had to do that is because corporations went before Congress and said TVs are too cheap. And so they mandated that everything had to change. There was no consumer-driven reason for that.
Well,
it was just
now if we want to pull out the conspiracy theory, the reason is that we had to go digital so that they could put the subliminal mind control underneath all of the television, and that's why everybody's so friggin' wacky today.
No, you can actually. I watched the. I remember watching the hearings about this because I went to work the next day. I used to watch C-SPAN a lot. I went to the work the next day, and my buddy that I talk politics all the time with, I'm like, "Did you see that?" And he's like, "No." And I told him about it. He goes, "No, no way." And he went and looked it up the next day. I can't believe it. Yeah, and that's why we had to switch to digital.
Yeah, I mean Comcast gave the little digital converter box for free. And I had to actually order a second one because the first one broke. And then about 6 months after that, they turned that little digital box into a decoder because they went ahead and encrypted all the damn channels, including the local broadcast channels, whereas before all you had to do was screw your cable into a cable-ready TV. And then, to top everything off, those damn little boxes that Congress paid for and that they gave us for free, now they're going to start charging $2.50 a month for it.
Yeah. Like I said, there are good government regulations, and then there's the government just doing really stupid shit, often because of corporate ties, and we can't get around that.
Well, yeah, there you go. I mean, it's the lesser of two evils. Do you want to be controlled by the government, or do you want to be controlled by a corporation? Personally, I'd pick government over corporation. Maybe other people would say the opposite, but
I don't.
It depends on either. Yeah, I'm not really for being controlled by anybody.
Well, you know what I mean. I mean, not controlled, but
But you are. But you are. That's the problem. I mean,
I mean, are we?
So we've steered away a little bit. Let's discuss what left and right is, because this is where my blurriness comes in. I understand authoritarian. I understand libertarian. Libertarian, no, you shouldn't need a driver's license. Everybody's free to do what they need to do as long as they're not harming anybody. Authoritarian, no, there must be control. We have to know who's doing everything, when, where, how, and why. But left and right is the confusing part. And right now, I think it's right is Republicans and left is Democrats, right?
Yes.
For the most part. And it just seems that's all you hear anymore. It's not, well, this person or this group. It's the right, the left is calling for this. And it's not about the party or the person. It's about assigning this side. And I'm still blurry about what the left and the right really is, other than Republican and Democrat. And that just doesn't make enough sense to me.
I mean, especially since both of them are pretty much controlled by corporations and big money interests.
It depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about the parties themselves, left and right is just the way people say Republican and Democrat these days, except for what it comes down to is your basic ideologies. The left, at least right now, from what I see, their answer is government will take care of your problems. And the right is the government won't take care of your problems, but we're still going to do the same things Democrats would in office anyway. Because they go out there and they make all these, we've talked about this so many times on Lords of the Night. They talked for 6 damn years about having a replacement for Obamacare, and they couldn't get it passed when they had complete control to do so.
A lot of them don't want to pull the trigger because they want that during election season to run off of.
I don't know how we got it. I absolutely hated that. I think that is one of the worst things that's happened to our nation is the national health care coverage.
I don't know. I mean, I was doing a little research, and you do realize that the Affordable Care Act isn't really a national insurance company. It's just holding insurance companies to task. And in actuality, in Massachusetts, that's where the framework for the Affordable Care Act came from. Because in Massachusetts, it's been running now for 10 years. And right now, they are, for the public sector of the insurance, in other words, the Medicare and Medicaid, they are the second lowest state in in savings. And for the private end, in other words, the corporations paying for group health care, they are the second from the highest. But the only reason that that's the case is, again, insurance companies were playing it fast and loose. They were selling insurance policies that really weren't covering shit. So all you had was an insurance card, and you paid them, whatever, to get this insurance card. But when it came to actually using it, they'd probably kick you off before you got a chance to even break even.
All right. As a supervisor, when all of that came out, I had just started being trained to supervise. And one thing I noticed for the grocery store, I was working my way towards management. So I was moving between night supervisor and day stock supervisor. And one of the things I noticed is after all that started rolling out and they came through and started redoing all the health care, one, we lost a lot of health benefits. And they combined things down and separated them out so that you had to buy extra policies to get the same features. But I noticed that kind of correlated with everybody going to part-time and not having to offer everybody benefits, and then really pushing really hard on, well, if they don't work after 90 days, if you don't like them, we have to get rid of them. Don't mess around. We don't need to keep them after 90 days because once they're here 90 days, we have to offer them benefits and this and this and this. And then all of a sudden things change. But it was just a whole change of the directive of how to take care of things and the ability to, there's a high turnover rate in grocery. People will work there for 6 months or a year and a half and then find something else. It's a stepping job for a lot of people unless you're working towards management or something in particular. But you notice... I was becoming a supervisor, and as I'm doing it, they're like, no, you do it like this, this, this. And then the next week it was, okay, the rules are changing. We have to try to get them out before that 90 days because as soon as they get eligible, we have to give them the paperwork. And once they sign that, we have to sign them up for benefits, and then it's harder to get rid of them. And it's like, what?
Well, here's the problem. The problem with Obamacare, even though it was, and I'm using air quotes here, working in Massachusetts, they should have either gone to single payer or just left it alone. And the reason being is that insurance companies, the Affordable Care Act had nothing to do with getting health care to poor people. It was never about that. And if you go back and actually watch the debates from back then, they don't even talk about it. Everybody's talking about the really healthy young people.
Right, but it was still the expansion of Medicare. I mean, it may not.
No, it wasn't. Medicare was untouched. What it did was all they were trying to do is pull a whole bunch of people who voluntarily didn't have insurance into the pool because it was insurance companies claimed it was too expensive. The reason that you had all these really crappy insurance policies is because the insurance company said, we can't make money with what we have right now. We can't offer better services because insurance is very tightly controlled, I worked for an insurance company once, and the maximum profit they're allowed to make in a year is 2%. That's it. Now, it might be different for health insurance. I didn't work for a health insurance company, but when your margin is that tight, that's the maximum you're allowed to make. If you have a spike in any kind of coverages, a spike in any kind of claims, you're screwed. And so what they want, and that had been happening in the healthcare industry because we have so many people getting older and older and older from the baby boom. They wanted their money from the, I think it's 18 to 30-year-old category.
Well, that's the way, right. That's the way to make it balance.
But you're forcing somebody who doesn't want insurance to get it to pay for people who need it. And
everybody needs it. They just don't want to pay for it.
But see, that's the thing. The whole point of this group is they want them in there because they don't need it. they're the least likely to get sick, the least likely to get injured. They're the least.
Well, I don't know about the least likely to. Have you ever seen a teenager
Yes.
drive a car from their roof? I mean,
Yeah, but you don't see teenagers often fall down and break a hip.
No, they fly through the air.
But yeah, it was all a scheme to get those people in. So it was never about making healthcare affordable. It wasn't. That was a lie that they told from the beginning. And if you watch the debates, they even tell you that it had nothing to do with it. So either they should have gone single payer, where it is an actual national health plan, which I would not be in favor of, or just left it how it was, which is what I would have favored. But yeah, this half-ass thing they did, no, it was a bad idea.
I personally would have liked to see a buy into Medicare plan where you could buy into it at cost. See, I mean, the most expensive part of medical insurance is the system, the doctors, the hospitals, your whole network. You have Medicare and Medicaid, which is a national network, and we're only allowing the elderly. That's like having a national interstate highway and only allowing people that are licensed over 65 years old onto that highway. Why not open it up to everybody? You would have money coming in that you wouldn't normally have. You'd have also, they say that Medicare and Medicaid, 90% of the money spent is spent on the patient. In other words, it's the most efficient. So in actuality, wouldn't that be a better solution? Because you would have the free market though still, because you would have a wholesale market for medicine, and then for the people that want, their own private room, their any doctor they can choose, they can go ahead and opt for buying a higher tier private insurance on top of it.
Because once you expand the market like that, you run into all of the other problems. One of the reasons that we can, and I'm again using air quotes, keep costs down in Medicare is because it's government funded.
But having that wholesale option, if everybody in the country was covered, other stuff would drop. In other words, car insurance would drop, because then car insurance would only cover the car. Right now, the most expensive part of coverage on car insurance is the medical end.
That's true.
If medical was covered, your car insurance payments would drop.
It depends on the state you're in.
Here's a weird question for either of you and for anybody in the chat. Now, I've been going to the same hospital or doctors for years, and I've noticed along my life there's been a slow increase in the number of doctor offices in the area. And in the last few years, like 3-4 years following Obamacare, I have now watched in the last 2 to 3 years several new offices. And I'm not just talking, little hole in the wall replacing a grocery store office or anything like that. I'm talking huge new facilities being built left and right all over the place. So the medical institution is obviously benefiting greatly from whatever happened. And I notice when you do finally need an appointment, because I'm one that doesn't go unless it's necessary, it's really hard to get in. And it didn't used to be like that. So why are there so many more doctors and so many more hospitals and so much harder to get in? But everybody's covered.
In my area, getting into a doctor is actually really, really hard. My doctor, I had to change doctors, and to get into the new one, I had to wait 3 months just for my initial appointment. Which it didn't used to be that way around here. Around here, you used to be able to pick up the phone and get in that day if you needed to. It depends on your area. Yeah, the doctors and hospitals especially are making a lot better money now, because they this was predicted, and it happened. When you tell somebody, hey, you got medical coverage, they go to the doctor more often. And that may or may not be a good thing. It depends. Got a hypochondriac, it's a bad thing. If it's a yearly checkup, that's probably a good thing. But so there's more money being poured in. Where somebody before would be like, hey, I can't afford to go to the doctor this week. Like, hey, I got insurance now. I'll go. As for, I've noticed far less doctors, though. And actually, the doctor I ended up seeing isn't even a doctor. It's a RA or whatever the hell they're called.
That's another thing I'm noticing. You're getting like 1 or 2 doctors per an office of like 8 or 9 people working and assistants and stuff on top of that. You're not seeing as high a percentage of doctors in the office. There used to be like 4 or 5 doctors, 1 assistant for each, and then like an RN or something, you know, a couple other professionals in there to do stuff. Now you see 1 or 2 doctors. What is the term for a family, not a doctor, a practitioner or something, not a nurse practitioner,
Oh, yeah.
but they're not quite a doctor, but they're almost a doctor?
Steven just pointed out the PA, the physician's assistant. I know there's another name for him too.
Yeah.
My doctor, the one that I had to stop seeing, it was him in his office, just him. He had 3 nurses and 6 people working behind a desk for him, taking care of all of the paperwork for insurance companies, making sure all regulations are followed, blah, blah, blah. You see that in hospitals too. There's just such a large reason that medical expenses have gone up is just administration as well.
Yeah.
They are broke. Seriously, who's broke?
The hospitals. Oh, physician. Oh, yeah, physician's assistant. But there's another term. I want to say it's just shy of passing all of their exams and everything. They can practice for so many years underneath another doctor. Is it the nurse practitioner?
It depends. There's a few different ones because I've seen several.
So to turn the convo back to left and right, what would you say are the 3 typical right wing strategies or ideas or basically what their plan is?
Well, if you're talking about Republicans, I don't think they really have one anymore.
I mean, it's military and defense.
That's one they bring up, but they don't talk about it as much as they used to. I mean, Trump did, but it wasn't pushed as much as like it was like under Bush. Sorry, go ahead.
It feels like it feels like the right is almost anti-globalism, and the left is pro-globalism. I almost feel like when I look at the left and right, more often than not, it feels like the left wants everybody to flow freely. They want money to flow freely. They want a world economy. They want world government. They want everything spread equally and everybody around the world treated equally. And Republicans are like, well, no, let's worry about us and then we'll worry about the world.
I think that's fair enough for right now, which is weird because globalization used to be a Republican thing. People forget NAFTA was one of their talking points before Clinton jumped on it.
But is trade globalization or is it?
Yeah.
Is it? No, I don't see trade as globalization. I see trade as like an interconnectivity type thing, working with your partners. I see globalization as like the UN kind of structure or the EU government growing to a world structure and everybody following the rules from one governing body across multiple countries until it takes over. I see that as globalism.
Well,
the EU was a trade bloc. That's how it started.
Right. Initially, that's how they sold it. They were never supposed to get their own military. They were never supposed to become their own country.
It was a trade bloc meant to compete with us.
Didn't work.
So it gets there. I mean, I see what you're saying. Yes. There right now, the left does seem to be on this. What you're talking about globalization more in a social aspect of it, where we should bow to the UN because the whole world should have a say in what we do.
Screw that.
I'm with you. Fuck that. Let them do their thing. We'll do ours, and we can be friends.
The TPP and NAFTA, all that shit was the death nails to this country. I mean, and the way they tried to pass it, the way they tried to push it, where nobody was even allowed to read it before it passed. I mean, what kind of shit is that?
It's politics as usual these days. If you're talking about what the right sells to its base, let's use that word. It's gun control. They don't want any kind of that. I would give you the military is probably one of them right now. I'm having trouble thinking of anything else that they've really pushed lately.
There was a joke. There was a joke in the 80s about the Republicans. They were the party of no. In other words, if the Democrats ever had an idea, the Republicans would say no.
I'm okay with no. So many people get mad because Congress gets gridlocked. I'm for gridlock.
I mean, listen, I understand that sometimes the best choice is not making a choice.
Well, our system of government was specifically set up for things to move slowly.
Right.
And that is a good thing.
But things are moving so fast now.
They are, and people are nothing's happening too much.
We have laws on the books that are dealing with, copper communication when everything is optical, digital, satellite. I mean, our country, our government, our laws are almost outdated by 20 years.
But see, I don't think they are. I think they're where they should be. The only exception to that is gay marriage shouldn't have had to go through the Supreme Court. That should have been something that
was state.
Yeah, basically. And other than that, I can't think of anything on a legal scale that I think needs to move forward any faster than it is right now. With the exception of enforcement of laws already on the book. This is what comes up with immigration all the time, which is the other kind of Republican talking point that they sometimes talk about. Depends on whether they're trying to court the Spanish vote. We have plenty of.
Let me put this out there since you
Sure.
brought it up, because this kind of hits me, because I've watched the arguments and I've tried to stray away from it, but since this is a political debate tonight, let's bring this up. There's the Mexican border, and there's the child detainee process, and there's the illegal immigrant misdemeanor and everything. So everybody hear me out. I'm a felon, okay? I have committed misdemeanors as well as my felonies, and I've been arrested. The police do not care who is with you. You get separated from them immediately, regardless of your situation or who you are. If you're committing a crime or they're detaining you for the commission of a crime, you are separated from everybody you are with. You are put in a car by yourself. You are taken there by yourself. Anybody who's going to see you is going to see you when you're done and released, and not until. That's how that works under a misdemeanor. So for children to be separated at the border, I understand that. The parents need to be separated from the children. Understanding also the reason is to prevent child trafficking. Understand also, in my mind, a child of a certain age, one that can talk, let's say a 10-year-old, my child's 12, he kind of understands. Anybody 10 or older is then a child committing a misdemeanor, and don't we also try them?
Well, it depends, because when you're talking about a family bringing a child across the border, the child doesn't have a say in that. That's not the same as a kid shoplifting, which we would, slap his hand for. So I don't blame anybody or any of the children coming across. I solely blame their parents. Now, if you're talking about the unaccompanied minors, then that would be case by case, but it would be so hard to prove whether their parents sent them or they decided to come on their own.
Well, the unaccompanied minors are the DACA program.
No, well, kind of. Those are people. I forget the dates, but
we're talking about people that were taken out of the war in what the hell is it? The European Eastern conflict during Clinton. We're talking about people that were taken, or kids. I'm not saying people, children, put on planes to get out of Chechnya and Czechoslovakia, and they basically came here as small children, grew up here. You couldn't distinguish them from being foreign. In other words, they're as American as you or I, and now they're looking at possibly getting deported to a country that they've never even known.
Well, they're, for the most part, DACA recipients are from south of our border. The others would be refugees, and they have status at this point. The deferred action for childhood arrivals is for kids who were brought here as minors and who lived here for a certain amount of time. But there was a cutoff on that. You had to have been in the United States.
There's a
cutoff dates.
There's a huge YouTuber that's a DACA kid.
Yeah.
What's his name? The comedian. What is it? Damn it! He's got 6 million followers. Shit. Now I've got to look it up. Go ahead and talk. Talk amongst yourselves.
The problem is right now we still have children, both accompanied and accompanied, coming across the border, or unaccompanied coming across the border, and they would not be at all covered by DACA. None of those children are. Right. Nobody arriving after whatever. I forget the cutoff date. I am so sorry.
Some even kidnapped.
Sure, all but right. Yeah, the issue is that they aren't you can't prosecute the kids. There's just no way to, and frankly, no reason to, because it's more about their parents.
Here's an odd question, and here's an odd way to look at this. Let's say you're a United States citizen, and we have to go through a lot to travel, but let's say in an argument for globalization, which I can't entirely follow because I don't believe in full globalization, but wouldn't you feel safer if the laws that covered you in the United States covered you wherever you went in the world?
And
think about that. There are some pretty harsh laws in some countries for doing some pretty minor crimes.
Your home country's laws.
No. I'm talking if it was a world government. Let's say we're the most powerful country. Wouldn't we sort of be in charge or oversee the world government, at least be involved?
Well, see, that's the problem.
Whatever laws we had here, they would be the same laws somewhere else.
No, but see, that's the. I mean, look at the Europe. I mean, they're talking about destroying the internet, and they're happy to do it to turn facts into fake news. You have the UN, who would love to see everybody that lives in the country move them into basically tall, small city states, and leave the country all by its lonesome.
Okay, but
unless we're involved in the rules,
right? If we had our laws here strewn around the world, wouldn't you feel safer knowing that what I hold as like the best country in the world, wouldn't you feel safer if that was worldwide?
Well, here's the problem. No, I wouldn't, because unless you're talking about them all adopting it, but we still get to be our own country, because you can see this even here in the United States. We don't all agree on how things should be run. So what would have inevitably happen is, let's say you get this world power and they all base it on the U.S., how we are right now. Yeah, for the first year, I would feel more comfortable going anywhere else because I got my free speech rights here. However, eventually the rest of the world who don't believe in free speech the way we do, they're going to get to vote and change those laws. And if we're not a separate country to where we can say, no, that's not, we don't want a part of that crap, then we would be subject to that changed law. This is exactly what we see happening in the EU right now. They actually had a case in the EU, and I wish I could tell you what it was about. I just know it happened, where they had a vote on something and everybody voted no. But the people in charge of the EU say, you know what, we want it anyway, and just did it. And I don't want the kind of people who would do that anywhere near deciding what I'm allowed to do.
You're not
I don't
talking about
either, but we're thinking about it rationally. All right,
And
I was
that's the
trying to
problem.
offer like an irrational thought, just like a childish. We are all
Well-
at least lived to know there's a point. We have seen enough. There's rules to protect and protect and protect, but there's always a way around the rule. Things always end up going bad when somebody finds that way, and that's how crimes are committed. Those are the type of people that commit those crimes. So we've lived. We understand that. A
But,
younger
see,
person
you're-
looking at this would go, globalization would be great because then what we have here would spread around the world, not realizing
But see,
that it
no,
would change.
no. Let me stop. Let me stop you right there, because that's not the problem with the people who are pushing globalization. They're not pushing globalization because they think that the American ideal needs to be spread across the globe. They're pushing it because they think we need to change. That they're never going, we need to be globalized so that Norway is like us. No, no.
David Dobrik. That's him.
Oh yeah. No, what they want is they want us to change so that say we're like what is it? Is it Norway the one they're always pushing these days? I forget, but they want to be more like Europe, where they can stop you for hate speech because they literally think speech can be harmful to people.
I love the Constitution. It's a shame that we passed the Patriot Act.
Yes, I agree.
Destroyed the Constitution. Hell, it was Bush that said, "Hey, the Constitution's just a piece of paper." So yeah, maybe we need to repeal the Patriot Act. Maybe we need to defund the what is it? What is that internal security we have? What the hell is it called? The Homeland Security, a title taken straight from World War II and the Germans. And
True story.
yeah, let's restore the Constitution. Can we do that, please? I'd like to do that.
We can't.
I would love
though.
to not feel like everything I'm doing is legislated. I don't want to feel like, oh crap, I got a pool in my backyard. Is it 24 inches? Is it shorter than 24 inches? How much water is in my pool? Do I have to have a 4-foot gate on it? What about an alarm? Do I have to have a socket ran right out to the pool? And how short does my lawn have to be? Can it get over 12 inches before the town cites me for not taking care of the property? These are things that literally happen. For what reason?
Can we agree to dissolve the Fed? Can we?
I'm all for that. The Fed is illegal.
The Fed is illegal. Can we agree that income is not labor?
Yeah.
Can
I stop paying taxes on something I've already paid for?
In other words, constitutionally, income is actually money making money. Labor is an exchange. You're exchanging your time and your effort for money. So you're not making money. You're not increasing your wealth. All you're doing is exchange. It's as if you grew some bananas and you gave them to your neighbor, and your neighbor gave you $20. You still gave your neighbor $20 of bananas. So it's an exchange.
Brian
Can we
O'Connor?
agree on that? So no taxes on labor or salary.
Brian O'Connor, not an HOA, a literal. I've been going through the rules for the town and the state I live in, and I'm being smacked in the face with the stupidity of some of them. I can't put a permanent post in the ground if it's in within 8 feet of the edge of my property without signed formal consent from the neighbor submitted to the town with a $50 bill.
Yeah, Brian, that's not just homeowners associations that do that. Around here, they recently passed a law that you can't have grass clippings in your driveway.
Yeah, some of this shit is ridiculous. I'm in an area where you have to get approval for your house colors, exterior house colors.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's Coral Gables. They only want certain colors. You know, God forbid it should be a light sky blue or something, or a semi gloss. No, no, no. Sorry. You know, so.
Brian says I would vote those morons out. That the problem is too many people agree with those morons. I'm lucky. I live just outside of the town proper, so we have a guy who cuts the lawn because I can't do it anymore. And right as he was done, he's like, "I will sweep this up real fast so you don't get any fine." I'm like, "I'm not in the city. They can't find me. They can go fuck themselves. Leave it right where it's at."
A lot of people are just apathetic to it. They're too busy working.
I went out and stuck a yardstick in my pool and said there's 22.5 inches of water. Fuck them.
Yeah.
Apparently the law is 24 inches and I have to have a 4-foot gate on an inflatable pool.
We talk so much about the global or countrywide problems that we have, but the people who do this stuff and they go across the political spectrum. There's just so many people that want to control your life, and I'm mostly libertarian, and I'm like, if I'm not hurting you, fuck off. I don't care what you have to say.
A lot of those pool regulations probably came from down here. We have a lot of pools, and there were, before a lot of those fences and whatnot, there were a lot of deaths where children were found on the bottom of pools and whatnot, and they didn't even belong to the family that owned the pool. We have also some mandated issues where, you know, the main drain on the very bottom, it actually has to have a double drain. So God forbid somebody gets close to that drain, it doesn't suck them to the floor. There's some pressure release by a second drain so they can pull away from it. You know, so I don't know. When it comes to safety issues like that, again, I don't see how an above ground pool, that's a little harder to
ask this. Data, aren't you in Florida?
Yeah, South Florida. A lot of pools down here.
Do you know Florida?
But they're below they're below ground pools, you know, so they're easier to get to. Why couldn't you do something with an above ground pool where you have these stairs pull up like a drawbridge, so you couldn't get to the deck
Doesn't matter.
to jump inside?
It's not even based on that anymore. Basically, it's based on the height of your water. If the height of your water is 24 inches or more, you have to have certain safety features. And it doesn't make sense. I installed a pool for somebody locally that I warned them about the town and everything, and I laughed, but I installed the pool anyway. Their pool is so tall, when they pull the ladder out and set it aside, there is no way me at 6'4" can easily get in this pool.
Right.
Damn.
Yeah, I never got the whole above ground pool thing. I guess, you know, I've always grown up with underground, you know, in-ground pools. Just the way it is down here.
Well, what happens when an in-ground pool freezes? It cracks the
There
foundation.
There is no
freeze.
freeze.
It doesn't freeze down there.
There ain't no freezing in South Florida.
Well, I think we've gone over our hour. We've confused a lot of viewers as they've come and gone. We don't have a set hour, but we go for a while.
So finally, the Republicans are the party of no, and the Democrats are insane. Have we agreed?
You know what? I would agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
That's actually
they're certainly pushing the limits.
And
we haven't
frankly,
covered SCOTUS or harassment or any of that yet.
And frankly, it is physically impossible to pull yourself out of a hole with your bootstraps. I've tried it. When you pull one bootstrap, the other boot goes in, and then when you pull that bootstrap, the other boot. There's no way to get out of the hole pulling your bootstraps. So Republicans have to come up with another plan.
Just jump.
Just jump. Keep that for a life lesson right now. And if anything goes wrong, just jump.
I am an idea man. That's what I do. I want to thank you guys. I enjoyed this, and sorry to the audience because we were all over the place. I don't mean to invite myself back, but have me back sometime. I've only got to see one. I don't watch enough YouTube anymore.
Do you believe in UFOs, Monkey?
I think they're possible. I don't think any have reached us yet.
I know that you only believe in one ghost, the ghost that you have in your own house.
Yes, that's true.
Believe in any others?
I haven't had proof of any others.
Do you believe that there's a conspiracy that the elites are trying to take over the world and turn us all into just mindless zombies?
No.
Well, maybe you'll have to come back and we'll have to prove it to you.
Maybe. I look up the red wine test. And
why do you think zombie movies and zombie games are so popular?
Because they're fun, dude.
Well, yeah, they're also
for real world scenario.
They're your future.
Well, I don't know if you've been watching the stream, but I'm going to do pretty well. Satsu's screwed, but I'm going to do well.
You got some cannons on that wheelchair, do you?
Oh man, if it comes to that, I will. Yeah,
By the way, I'll be on the 7 Day to Die stream next Wednesday.
Oh, sweet! You're gonna join us?
Yes.
Cool.
You'll have to teach me.
Oh, it's so much fun.
I'm gonna start off as a Fred Flintstone with just a stick, a pokey stick.
You don't even start off with that. You have to get your own stick.
Right. I have to make my own pokey stick.
Well, thank you everybody so much for joining us. I see on my participants list we got Brian O'Connor, Cryptic, and Steve Lausen still joining us in chat. Please feel free to join me Monday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for the great debate, and we will proceed with the week from there. Thank you again, Ranting Monkey, for joining me, and thank you, Data, for being here again for episode number 10, the random political episode.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being such a great producer there, Num. And thank you for everybody in chat spending your time with us. Well, I know that the debate in chat was pretty lively too.
I was trying to keep up with that as well, but it was really moving in there. I appreciate the output. I was trying to read it all. Everybody, like I'm trying to do, please make sure you slap, lick, kick, headbutt, whatever you want to do to all those buttons on your way out that you enjoy playing with. And comment
too.
And comment. We like comments.
And comment.
We like
comments.
Thank you
all so much. That's it. Goodbye.